Here we go. Can't find it. Here it is.
Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/Amigos podcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we are going to talk about...
Are you enjoying the Amigos podcast?
We're already running into problems. Today we're going to talk about Sensible World of Soccer. So, Sensible World of Soccer. Before we get to it, though, we got a lot of feedback from last week's show.
Did we?
Mostly...
Is it bad or good?
Well, Dreamcatcher wrote in to talk about UK game pricing. So, remember we talked about last week, you said that... you said... What game were we talking about? You said was £25. Was it...
Oh, I knew. You corrected me right there on the spot.
Right.
So, yeah.
We were discussing some game, and you said, well, that sounds like it's a mid-tier title.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't think so. I think that was pretty much the top of the line. And it turns out I was correct.
I knew you were bringing this up for a reason.
Dreamcatcher said that $25.99 would have been smack bang in the full price region here in the UK, while a budget title would be $7.99 or $9.99. And so, and of course, pounds all the way up until fairly recently, about double, what we got here. So,
last time Dreamcatcher chimed in, he was on my side. So now he's put a spear into me. I appreciate that.
And he said that Team 17, they had an interesting policy on prices in that they charged what they believed a product was worth based on things like originality and effort and time that it took to make the game, which is not the case for most developers.
That's not the worst idea, though, is it?
No. I think
good for them. Team 17. I like their philosophy.
They're a good outfit. We also have...
They're still around because of that, I guess.
Yeah. We also got some feedback on the BBC Electron.
Okay.
So, Paul Kitchen, Kirchen? I want to say Kitchen, but I wrote Kirchen on the notes. Well, it's on my notes, but anyway, Paul...
It's not Gary Kitchen.
It's not Gary Kitchen. Paul used to be a regular contributor to comments and things like that. He left us for a while, but he's back.
Oh, welcome back.
And Barry's World, his whole world, chimed in to tell us about the Electron. The Electron, it was a redesigned version of the BBC Micro. So the BBC Micro... was the kind of the first. It was kind of the Apple II of the British computing world, in that it was the first computer that a lot of kids were exposed to in schools because they had a license for the from the BBC, and it was of course manufactured by Acorn, the purveyor of the fine Archimedes platform.
Purveyor. Oh, there you put that.
So that's a little bit about the BBC Electron.
How did we mention that last week?
I don't even remember.
It must have been what the game was released on. That's
yeah. We got some news from our favorite site, Indie Retro News.
Love them.
About Hunter.
Yes.
Now, Hunter is a game that I had never heard of before.
Me either.
But it sounds awesome. It was described on Indie Retro News as a mix between Battlefield, Grand Theft Auto, and Far Cry. They've expansive open worlds, a military theme. And I guess, it's a sandbox type thing where if you want to just screw around, and jump into cars and run around and stuff like that, you can. And it was released in 1991, so it's pretty early for an example of this game.
Was it just, obviously this has been ported over to the CD32, is that the plan?
Well, I guess so. It was, and so it has been released for the CD32. Beautiful. I think this is another Amiga J.
We're going to have to break out the CD32, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's almost time.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a show on one and then throw it down.
Absolutely.
Because I'm watching a great series, not to plug somebody else, but plug. I think I've mentioned it before, but there's a gentleman from the Retro Asylum that's doing a game-by-game podcast or a video YouTube series on every game for the CD32. Now, he's not doing these mystery compilations, but I enjoy what he's doing. And a lot of stuff on the CD32 I've not seen, and it's pretty interesting. And I happen to have one with a special Aaron mod and I never use it. So we should absolutely break that.
It's
out.
a system that needs more recognition.
Yeah, I mean, technically, it's not in a computer per se, but it's sort of like the XEGS we were talking about.
It's in the family
earlier.
for sure.
Yeah.
The next news is I'm happy to report that there is a new update for the Giana Sisters.
Okay, great Giana Sisters.
Yeah, for the CD32. This again comes to us from Indie Retro News.
Love them.
And they're using graphics ported from the DS version. So the DS got a release of the Giana Sisters last year, I think. And so it's kind of full circle. It's almost like when they put, before Mickey Mouse, what was that guy's name?
Steamboat.
No.
What was his name? I don't remember.
But anyway, he made an appearance as a bad guy, I think, in one of the Mickey Mouse games that came out. So it's kind of going full circle when the Giana Sisters is officially endorsed and released on a Nintendo console.
Yeah, I've played. That series is still on. It's still going, and they have Steam releases. And I played one. I believe it's called Giana Sisters Twisted Dream. Does that sound right to you?
I've not heard of this.
It's on Steam. It's quite good. It's a very clever game. My son plays it as well. So I mean, it's a far cry from what was originally a Mario. Let's face facts. It was a Mario
rip-off
borrowing, right? But which was a good one if you consider the time. But they took that name, which apparently has some value because and apparently this isn't the last one. Apparently there's even newer ones than the one I've been playing. So kind of neat.
That is cool. And finally, the last piece of news that I have, Will Williams wrote in and he said, I can't remember if you guys covered this. We didn't. But there's a new FPGA project out. It's a 24-bit card for Soro 2-based Amigas. And so
I did see something about that, but
you?
my lack of expertise in the field prevented me from commenting on it.
I am not exactly sure what this card will do for you, but I will put a link in the show notes. Will, if you can chime in and let us know what marvelous things can be accomplished with this 24-bit card, we'd appreciate it so we can fill in the listeners. And it's the source code and the schematics are available on a GitHub link that I will post on the site.
Along those lines, and this I guess is a sort of news, but I've been following the progress on the Amiga 600 accelerator. We've talked about the Vampire 2, and they keep releasing. I don't want to call them drivers, but I mean, because when they update this thing, they literally update the hardware to a certain. I mean, they rewrite code that is on the hardware, and it's sort of like those processors. And I saw a 600 this week running emulated. I think it was emulated Super Nintendo.
Wow,
which is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Now, was it running at full speed? No. Was it running at half speed? Yeah. But it's astounding to think that it could do that.
Well, they're both based on the same processor, so you're asking the processor in your Amiga plus whatever the Vampire is giving you,
which is a considerable amount.
Yeah, to basically emulate a whole nother 68,000.
Yeah,
processor.
And apparently they've also activated the. No, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I think they've activated the HDMI on it, and I'm pretty sure they've activated the SD on it, which they had, but it was dormant effectively until they did put in the right things to control it. So again, I urge them to release a 1200 version of this incredible accelerator because everything I've seen, I mean, they've got the 600 playing MP3s, which I mean, multitasking with MP3s. Something else I saw, the one was running at resolutions that were like 720p or 1080i. I mean, ludicrous resolutions for an Amiga,
right?
And I mean and this isn't like a newer Amiga. This is it's a 600 doing this.
But
I mean,
it's all
astounding.
That card is just.
It is that is a triumph of a card. It's amazing what they've been able to do with it. So I'm following it. I'm hoping we'll get one our way, or even for the 500 would be nice too.
Do you have any other news stories?
I think that's about all I got, sir.
Okay, well, we will play this.
Are you enjoying the Amigos podcast? If so, please take a moment to write us a review on iTunes. iTunes is how most people discover podcasts, and by writing a review, you'll help us get to the top of the retro gaming and computing section. Thanks!
All right.
Have we got any of those yet?
I have not checked since the last time we asked. iTunes is so important for discovery. We still get a tremendous amount of hits, but once I subscribe to a podcast on iTunes, I never look at it again because then I know if I like it or not.
Yeah, you're probably right. But still, hey.
We'll check it out. We'll let you know if you've written a review next week.
If you wrote one, thank you. We swear someone looked at it.
We have some site updates. Dreamcatcher, he's a machine.
Yeah.
He
soon to be incarcerated.
Yeah, he took us inside Ocean's headquarters.
Ballsy.
Yeah, he went in there and he's taken some pictures. Some of the pictures he's taken, I'm not sure if he was allowed to take. But
none of them, I'd wager.
Yeah, probably so. And so if you're interested in seeing what Ocean's headquarters from back in the 80s and 90s looks like today, Dreamcatcher, our reporter, intrepid beat reporter in Manchester, has done that. He's actually published it in 3 parts, so there's a lot of information in there. We also have a couple Amigos plays. I try and release one of these a day. We've got such a backlog from when Chad came over a day and spent a day playing a lot of superhero games. But one that I put up was Castle of Dr. Brain.
I saw that go up, and I thought, wow, this is one I've heard of but never played.
Yeah, it's basically sort of a precursor to Myst, in that it's a lot of kind of logic puzzles and things like that, but they're not as abstract as Myst. It's literally they're throwing up a Sudoku puzzle or they're throwing up a tile sliding puzzle. Now, the reason why I stopped playing it is I ran up against the copy protection. That it hasn't been cracked. Now, you can easily go online, I found out afterwards, and find the code wheel.
Whoops.
But I was trying to figure out this puzzle because they don't explicitly tell you, hey, this is the copy protection. I was like, how can I figure this out? And so it's a little bit not so smart on my part. But if you watch me play the rest of that game, there's a lot of not so smart going on.
I love the background you had put up.
Yeah, so we want to thank Dreamcatcher for providing that background for us. It's wonderful. Mm-hmm. And we also want to thank Dreamcatcher for RoboCop's pirate dongle.
He was responsible for that, was he?
He wrote an article about, this is something that I hadn't heard of. I guess Ocean Software, again we mentioned Ocean, when they released RoboCop 3, they had a new, supposedly foolproof way of preventing piracy by way of this dongle that attached to your system that the software would check from. You can read all about whether it was a success or failure.
That's a great article.
Yeah.
Have you ever dealt with a dongle in the past?
No.
I've had that was a thing. I actually have a dongle for the Amiga. I don't know what it goes to. It came in the box. So
maybe it's for RoboCop 3.
I don't know. It's a pass-through dongle. It hooks in, which somewhere and some just had to put in and pull out. Mm-hmm. But I've seen it on every PC. And the IBM had them.
Was that a big thing for
the
copy
Atari
protection?
had them, by the way. Dongles, absolutely. It seems like it was big for a little while. Because people bypassed them.
I don't know much about PC gaming or really computer gaming, but you said for the Atari, like the Atari computer.
I absolutely remember having a dongle for something on the Atari. I had to look. I don't remember what it was. I remember, like I said, just much like the Amiga, plugged in the joystick port. And I think that one though, you pulled it in and put it out, and I think it was. The funny thing is, I think in both instances that I remember using it was for utilities. Like a word processor or something like that. It wasn't for a game.
Interesting.
I don't remember ever seeing one for a game.
Actually, now that I think about it, I want to say that Adobe stuff.
Paint program, I think
stuff
was
like
what
that.
it was.
Yeah.
Some sort of paint program. It might have been, and one of them might have been like a Lotus 123 or something like that.
I can see a program like that.
I guess dongles were a thing. They went away. I mean, think about how irritating too. You lose the dongle, you're screwed.
Right. Even if you paid for the program.
And can you imagine trying to get another one? Holy smokes. They would not believe you in a million years, right?
No.
So, yeah, that's a good article. I enjoyed that one.
And the last thing before we get into the game, I wanted to give everybody my official review.
Oh, yes. I mentioned because I'm dying to see this myself.
Yeah, Bedrooms to Billions. And that's not exactly centered on the screen. You know what? I'm just going to quit while I'm ahead and not worry about it.
Don't poke the bear boat.
So, I have mixed feelings about this film.
Really? Because as I recall, last week you'd watched the first half.
I watched the first half.
It seemed like they were building up to the release of the Amiga. Is that right? And
that's right.
At that point, bam! Here's the meat of the sandwich. What did you think?
Well, the meat of the sandwich was a little bit like filler. The problem with the story is that they build up this narrative. You know, the first hour and a half of the movie, they're climbing the mountain up to the release of the Amiga. Once the Amiga gets released, the movie shifts gears. It almost like it becomes a different movie altogether. And what they do is they interview a series of programmers and developers that worked on Amiga games. And each one of them says, the Amiga was amazing. I was able to do things on the Amiga that I was not able to do on any other platform. And then it goes to the next game. And then the developer says, the Amiga was amazing. I was able to do, etc.
So there was no insight on what the game was, how they developed things or what?
I mean, they talked a little bit about, you know, rotoscoping for Out of This World and stuff like that. But it was mostly compared to the first half where they got very technical with the way that the processor worked and everything like that, even over my head, which doesn't take much. But the second half, it was just like a bunch of people cheerleading for the Amiga. And for people that haven't seen those games in years and they're watching this for the nostalgia, I'm sure it's great. But since we deal with Amiga games all the time, you know, a lot of those games we've reviewed and we've talked about, and I don't need this guy telling me that they're awesome. I know they're awesome. I was really hoping for the narrative part of the story to continue. Now, it would have been a sad story, obviously, because after the launch of the Amiga, things went south almost immediately and never really recovered. But the last half, it was just kind of, and I skipped, you know, after about half an hour, 45 minutes, I was like, is this all there is? And I skipped, you know, around towards the end, and it really seemed like that was all it was. The last half of the movie is just kind of a retrospective on all these games and the people that made them, and the people talking about how great it was to develop for the Amiga.
Did they go into the death of?
Well, not that I saw. Now, I might not have seen. They might have covered it in the last couple minutes. But it just seemed like, you know, they would show a game, and sometimes there would be a montage. They'd have some guy from like Team 17 or something. They have a montage of games. They'd have some song playing in the background. It's very well done. The cinematography it looks like a real documentary. It's not something that somebody put together in their basement by far. It's worth the money. Even though I didn't enjoy the last half of it, it was still more than worth the $5 I spent to rent it.
For a lay person who it's funny, I don't consider us that anymore because we've done this for a while. But for your average person that, like you said, is looking for a kick of nostalgia,
it's
probably
perfect.
not the people that are listening for this show. They're probably people that are.
If you remember having the Amiga when you were a kid and you haven't emulated the Amiga since then, or you know emulation is something. If you know somebody that emulation is just beyond them or they're not into it, but they'd like to relive those good times, this is perfect. It's very positive. I almost wish they would have focused on more of the different machines. You know, they talked a little bit about how the 2000 was going to be the business machine, the 500 was going to be the games machine, but I would have liked to have had more of the Ars Technica retrospective, you know, the 9-part thing in movie form. Now, maybe that wouldn't have sold as well. Maybe it definitely would have been harder to put together because you'd have to find all kinds of extra footage that wasn't just game footage. But overall, you know, it's worth a rent. If you're a hardcore Amiga fan, you've got to buy it. That's my review on Bedrooms to Billions.
I'm going to have a look at it hopefully this week, and maybe I'll see how my opinion meshes with yours.
Yeah, I want to know what you think.
You know, because I was there for the old stuff when it was released, but I mean, I was hoping for something like the documentary on the Pinball 2000.
Right,
that's sort of what I was hoping for.
Yeah, and
some technical, some what it was like to develop. What happened when it released, the aftermath, and then the descent. That's what I was kind of hoping for. That was an excellent.
Yeah, that's one of the best video game type movies of all time for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's time to move on to our game of the week.
Oh boy, I've been looking forward to this one.
Shh, man, I gotta start.
Are you enjoying the?
No. I'm trying to be more professional. It's not working out very well.
When did you start doing that?
Last week. The problem is that I've got this playlist of tracks, and I need it to stop after each track, and it doesn't.
You should just say the lines. and then I'll hum the tune.
All right.
Amigos
Amigos Game of the Week.
Do we've got a thing for that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I haven't used that one since like episode 2.
I'll say there you go.
Yeah. What are we doing? What are we talking about? Sensible World of Soccer. This is a soccer game.
Yes, it is.
It is produced by Sensible Software. So it's a very descriptive title.
Yes, I agree.
It was originally released in 1992, the original, but the original Sensible Soccer was released in 92. And then Sensible World of Soccer followed in 94, and then followed again by many iterations.
Yes.
You said it still continues
to be updated to this day.
Now, the version that we played on the live stream was the 95-96 version. And it is, I guess we should talk about the Sensible series versus Kickoff. That's really the only, because I mean, it's a soccer game.
Sure.
You've got tiny players on a big pitch, and you've got a crowd. But let's talk about the differences between the last soccer game that we reviewed. So Kickoff 2 was an earlier title. I think it came out in 1990.
Somewhere, it was slightly before this one.
Yeah,
because the guys actually played it
right
before developing this one.
I think Kickoff 2 was 90 and Sensible Soccer was 92. There might have been a Kickoff. The next, I know there was a game called Goal that was like Kickoff 3. We haven't played that, so we can't really compare it. There are similarities between Kickoff 2 and Sensible World of Soccer, more so than the original Kickoff and Sensible Soccer. Like there's penalties in this game. There's red cards, yellow cards. I think those are all the cards.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the penalty phase. I know they do have them. The funny thing about these games are, if you look at soccer games on the Amiga, believe it or not, I really got into this game this week because I didn't feel like I was 100% fair to Kickoff 2. I'm not a soccer guy, and so I thought, I'm going to try to do this a little bit better and do a little more research on the subject. And if you look back, and these are things I never knew before I did this research, I'll be honest with you. I know obviously I didn't play that much soccer. Before any of these games, there was a game out. Look at the name of this thing. It was an arcade game, and it was called Tekken World Cup. Okay? It's widely believed that this was sort of the catalyst, if you will, to get these games rolling. The guys that did Sensible Soccer early on did a game, which I believe we mentioned this one time. It was called Microprose Soccer. Do you remember we talked about that? Mm-hmm. I don't know what. God knows
maybe
why.
when we were talking about Micro League Wrestling. We were talking about those.
Maybe who knows? But Microprose Soccer had sort of the same team that went on to do Sensible Soccer, and it's widely believed that the team, I don't want to say lifted, but followed along the same concept that Tekken Soccer did the arcade game. And it was the overhead view. It was zoomed in more than you would eventually would be. And it was a simple game. It was a lot, this was a much simpler game in a much earlier time, right? And when you fast forward to watch the team that ended up being the Sensible Soccer guys, and it's the same band of guys that did Cannon Fodder, which we talked about a while back, and you can certainly see the similarities in the men. They've had the crossover with that stuff, so it's they got their little guy models down, and the little guy models came from a game they did called Mercalomania, which we haven't.
I read that.
We haven't played Mercalomania, but we've I've seen it. That's a game I played back in the day. And the one thing about that game is, again, it's got the little guys that run around, and they look just like this. I'm going to go on the assumption that they took a lot of the same code and put it right into Sensible Soccer. And they, from an interview I read, what the guys did was when they were making Mercalomania, they were working on it, they were playing the hell out of Kickoff 2. And they liked Kickoff 2. Dino Dini, right? Great, brilliant game if you're into soccer. And they as they were playing it, they found things that they thought were very good points, and then they found some stuff they didn't like so much. And so they got the seed of an idea to come up with a new soccer game. And from what I read, they actually took the guys from Megalomania and put them in little outfits and made a pitch, threw them out there, did the programming, and that was the birth of the game.
Right.
And I guess some of the things I didn't like, so we could talk about the differences, right, between Kickoff 2 and Sensible 1. The original Sensible Soccer, right? You've got a smaller pitch and probably a slightly wider view, I'd say. Now, you thought the guys, we'd have to look at them side by side. I thought the guys were a little bigger. You thought they were a little smaller.
I thought they were a little small.
I haven't played Kickoff 2 for a while, so I had to go back and look. But to me, they seemed a little more detailed. But maybe that's because they were moving slow enough for me to see them.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
They did away with the radar screen, right? They added a lot of awesome features like custom ability. In terms of teams, they added lots of rosters, updated rosters. A lot of the stuff that people like me and you aren't going to really delve into because it's a lot like the Madden franchise, and you could edit the rosters. And so Sensible Soccer came out and effectively dethroned Kickoff 2 when it came out. And then, of course, once Sensible came out, everyone saw, okay, this is the game. I mean, it was clearly the game. No offense to any of the Kickoff 2 people, right? But it was the game. And so, Kickoff moved on. But apparently they had a falling out with Dino. I don't remember if he did 3, or I can't remember if he did one more and then they parted, or he may have parted immediately after Kickoff 2. I can't recall off the top of my head. But he ended up doing his own series. They continued Kickoff, and then but Sensible was pretty much upon release, it was the number one game on the Amiga pretty much until the Amiga went out.
Right.
You know, it was a Sensible Soccer game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having played them both, what were your thoughts? Again, we're not going to make this Kickoff 2 versus Sensible Soccer, Sensible World Soccer, but it sort of is, right?
Yeah, and you've got to compare genres. You know, you got to compare games within the same genre. Kickoff 2 is much more difficult. I think it's a much more nuanced game. You really have to know what you're doing to play Kickoff 2 well.
That explains a lot.
Sensible is not nearly as hard to jump into. You feel like you have control over the ball. You feel when you're moving down the pitch that you're only with Kickoff 2. I was just like, I don't want to lose control of the ball.
If you went diagonally, you were screwed. If you went sideways, you were screwed.
Yeah,
it was difficult.
The ball sticks to you more in Sensible Soccer. It doesn't stick to you completely. If you make a sudden move, you'll lose it. But I think passing is a lot easier in this game. That your teammates tend to be where you pass the ball most of the time.
Yes.
Since the pitch is larger, you can see downfield more and you can see where your guys are. The radar screen in Kickoff 2 was not helpful to me in that regard because I couldn't switch my view from the pitch to the radar back and forth quick enough to make that useful.
And really, you needed to be able to do that to play it properly. Because when all the time I'd run right out the back of the base of the back line, I'd be like, well, where am I?
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, you're right. I think they as we talked about in the live stream, the pitch in this is the right size.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 2-to-1 or 10-to-1, whatever. The ratio is not exactly the same. But in terms of playability, they zoomed it out the exact proper amount. The pitch was the exact right amount of size, so you know where you're at all times with the lines on the field. That's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
Really, if you're going to be super realistic about it, because Kickoff 2, one of its big claim to fame was the pitch was monstrous. Which a pitch is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so. This is the happy medium, right? Between monstrous, where you need a radar screen, versus pretty good size, and you don't need the radar. You're right about the control. The ball control is so much simpler on this, but not too simple.
Mm-hmm. And you can still put a little English on the ball too. When you kick it, you can bend it a little bit.
Love it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't have enough time in the first one to even think about that. I was just like, oh God, I got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
It was frantic. This one's less frantic. This is it still goes at a good clip.
Mm-hmm.
It's not slow.
Yeah, you play a game probably in about, I'd say, 5 minutes.
Depending on what you have, you've got the
what your
timers
options.
you got.
But if you go with the default game,
there are options for indoor. There's options for And now the original, from what I've read, the original Sensible World, as well received as it was, had some issues, and the biggest one being that the goalies apparently were idiots. Right, I've heard that was a big issue, and then I've heard it's funny. I don't think I've seen a game. I don't know if we've covered a game that released different versions of the same game, and they were a new box version. I saw different boxes for version. It'd be Sensible Soccer 1.1, Sensible Soccer 1.3. It's 3.2, whatever. Which I think that's unusual.
It is unusual.
And I read that in some of the instances, I think Sensible World of Soccer original release, they basically gave you the update. The other ones, I don't know if you paid a small price, or I don't know how they did it. But people wanted to pay it because they would, aside from the fact that they were fixing bugs, you would get updated rosters.
I wonder if it was, if you bought the game, if you got a postcard or something you sent in that said, send me news when a new update comes out, and then maybe you send them a couple bucks and they just send you a floppy disk.
Yeah, if anybody out there knows, I'd be interested in knowing how they did updates. Because I've seen actual boxes with those update numbers on it.
That's so weird.
The Sensible World of Soccer had a lot of updates, right? They had I think we played at 96. They had, I think they released up. Was that the last one? They actually was a physical release. Was 96? I think it was.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and then there was a European version. There was an international version, right? The key difference between Sensible Soccer and Sensible World of Soccer was just the sheer volume of leagues, teams, divisions. I believe I read that it had 12,000 individual players with stats. Now, in modern...
I've got the number right here.
Oh, what do you got?
I've got 1,500 teams and 27,000 players.
That was teams. I think I said. Think about that, by the way.
Crazy.
Just think of, we're going to put 27,000 of anything in a game.
Yeah.
And apparently they've got the tiniest little nothings. I usually play the American one just because I'm familiar with that. They've got the Major League Soccer teams in there,
wow.
from back when that, it's like the Galaxy.
Well, that's still a thing. They still have MLS.
Right. But I'm just saying that's pretty obscure, right? And then there's I was listening to a guy review this, and he was mentioning the team that had only had one league win or ever.
Wow.
It's like I can't remember the name of this team. Another thing that Sensible World added was a career mode, which was a 20 season mode where you basically run the team, and you can run it and play them, or you can just run it. You can just do it. So effectively, it was a team manager, which was another thing Dini did was as a separate game. He released a very famous soccer team management game. Which would in America it'd be like a NFL management game where you run the team and you draft the players.
It was called. Wasn't it called Player Manager?
Yeah, something like that. But this, from what I've read, again, this is something beyond our depth, to be completely honest. But from what I read,
it's never stopped us from pressing on before.
Yeah, in Sensible World of Soccer, it's a watered down to what the other big time, soccer simulation games were, but it's still pretty juicy. You get to get your team. You can get fired. You can get picked up. You can sign on to coach other teams. You can and you coach your team to whatever championship in their league, and possibly you can get an international play, and possibly you can
move on and conquer the world.
You can win the World Cup. Which is neat.
Yeah.
I know if I was playing, that would be appealing to me. I like that kind of stuff. Now I wouldn't know about wheeling and dealing. But it'd be interesting, and not having that would have been quite a treat for that to come along. Other additions were, and we talked about this, they eventually, after, I can't remember if it was the initial version of Sensible World or the second version, but they had refs. I know carding was in the original version of Sensible World of Soccer, and then they eventually added refs that would come up and give you the card.
Right. I like that a lot when they run out there. And remember that one commercial with Deion Sanders in it? Where the guy he was playing soccer, Deion Sanders, and the ref came up and showed him the card, and he took the card and he signed it and he gave it back to the ref.
I don't like Deion Sanders.
Well, he's not.
As a Cowboy fan, and he played for us, and I still don't like him.
I was going to say.
Yeah, he went out in the middle of the field one time after he scored an interception touchdown, and right on the star in Texas Stadium, and posed like he was some, and he did it once, and then he intercepted another pass.
Well, he was the first player to ever intercept a ball and score a touchdown. I mean,
yeah, right. And then but he did it again the same game, and he went and scored, and he ran all the way back to the 50-yard line. He did it again, and one of Dallas's like flunky secondary guys came out and just ran over him.
That's awesome,
and it was great. But it was but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, getting back to the game, the fact that the crowd chants are in it,
that's huge.
The colors. The pitch looks. I mean, I don't really the weather details, right? We didn't even go into that. You've got different pitches. You've got different weather. You've got, like I said, stuff that we'll never touch on, like huge league play. You could have, I mean, effectively, you could have 20 people. You could have 20 teams in a league, each played by a person, and you could have all those guys playing all the time.
Yeah.
And from what I've been told, on the modern emulated equivalents, I mean, the Amiga or the PC version, I don't know which, but you could actually play online with one of the modern, matchup things. So you could actually play this game online as it stands.
Right.
Now, if we wanted to go into the Sensible World of Soccer was on the Amiga. It was the last game they released there, but Sensible Soccer moved on over the years to several different mediums, and none of them looked that good, to be completely honest with you. I saw I think it was the PlayStation game, and it looked not
well,
good.
Whenever you try and modernize, especially in that early 3D era.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
But, I mean, much like when Madden did that, the game, there was a time when you had Madden as a solid 2D game, right? Or simulated 3D at best. But it had all the bells and whistles. And then when they made that leap into 3D, the game looked weird, and they regressed on almost everything that they'd built up, and it took them a long time to build back up to where they were. Well, this apparently did the same thing, and then eventually there was even a sensible release on the 360.
I own that, actually.
You actually own it,
yeah,
eh?
I bought it, and I played it often when I was living in Korea.
Because I heard it was not good, and I heard that the online was not good either.
Well, I never played it online. The players were much bigger than they were in the original version. Probably maybe 3 times the size, so you didn't get as much of the pitch on the screen. I still found it enjoyable, but I'm not coming from it from the same perspective as somebody that grew up playing the original.
What blew my mind was they had a release for the Wii. It looked goofy, as you can imagine. I heard it was not bad. I heard it wasn't. But from what I've heard from people that know a lot more about soccer and a lot more about soccer video games than I do, the number one is their Sensible World of Soccer, updated to the 9s and ready to go. And like I said, there are people that still diligently update. I don't know if they update 27,000 individual players, but they might. You never know. People are strange, you know. And if they're still having a kickoff to championship in wherever it was, Denmark or Holland or wherever it was, then they might be, updating 27,000 roster spots. Who knows? But overall, I was really surprised at how much I like this game.
I love this game. I thought it was great. And I'm kind of like you. I tend to like most of the soccer games that I like. Nintendo World Cup. Have you ever played that? It's got the River City Ransom type characters in it, or the Super Super Dodgeball.
Yeah,
it's one of those Technos games.
Yeah.
It's got those kind of sprites in it. It's real fun too.
This thing, I've played a bunch of soccer games. Soccer, and I like hockey too, and it's similar when you play them. This is the best view to play soccer. It is, in my opinion. It's not as pretty as FIFA World Cup or there's another one.
Winning 11.
Winning 11. It's nowhere near as attractive or realistic looking. But when you want to play soccer, a fun sort of arcadey, not too arcadey, but arcadey soccer, I think this might be the best one I've played.
Yeah. Is a total package, there's no question. And you could play this game for the rest of your life and never run out of stuff to do.
Yeah, and the atmosphere.
The chanting was great. Just not having that bland crowd noise, but hearing the oh, and all that stuff. Yeah,
and we haven't even talked about the cool song in it.
The theme tune is great.
It's obviously... I guess it was Joseph is the same. Did the music on this one too, and was it Richard Joseph? And it's another catchy tune with the trumpets and stuff. And it's got all the sensible flair. I mean, those guys were good.
Mm-hmm.
They were very good and knew exactly what they were doing. And this probably, I like the Cannon Fodder a lot too. Don't get me wrong, but I think I like this better than Cannon Fodder.
Oh, I definitely do. This has got so much more replay value.
And one of the problems one of the irritating things for me is on the 1200, and maybe someone out there can tell me what I'm doing wrong, but this thing comes up glitchy as hell. On my real 1200, I have problems running it. And I've tried every version, and they all do the same thing. So I'm guessing it's a WHD load thing. But luckily, I have the disc, so I could actually run it off that. That worked okay for me. But yeah, I give it a 2 thumbs up, and I would wager this will probably come back up when we do a big throwdown with all of our buddies over here, because I can see we're having some sensible world. Or Cincy, if you would. If we have some time on that, I'd see the boys getting into it and having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Aaron, I've got a special treat for you for this episode.
Oh, boy. These are always death.
So, I want to make sure we don't run into nonsense. I know your love of soccer.
Yeah.
I know your knowledge of the game. I've prepared a little soccer quiz.
Oh, jeez Louise.
For you.
All right.
I want to make sure.
I've got my thinking toque on. I'm ready to go.
Okay. Question number 1.
All right.
Name 3 European soccer clubs.
Okay. Arsenal.
Arsenal, 1.
Manchester United.
2.
Milan.
That's a city.
Hold on a second. ST, something like that. Isn't that one of the teams? Don't tell me. I know I'm missing some of the big ones too. I don't know. I can't get a third one.
All right, Real Madrid would have been acceptable. Sheffield United.
I've heard of Real Madrid.
My home
too.
team.
Sheffield United. All right.
But you did well. 2 out of 3.
Okay.
Not bad. Not bad.
You know, the only reason I got Arsenal is because I saw Bend It Like Beckham.
Ah.
By
Well,
the way, I like that.
question number 2 is
All right.
related. What city is the team Arsenal located in?
Birmingham?
London.
Oh, sorry. Should have known that, shouldn't I?
Well, moving on.
You know, this is built to get me laughed at, isn't it?
Number 3.
All right.
There's 4 questions. We're
Oh,
almost done.
good.
What is Manchester United? Now, there's multiple answers to this because it's changed. Name one of Manchester United's corporate sponsors.
Virgin.
Incorrect.
Oh.
You could have said Emirates
All right, wouldn't have got that.
or their current sponsor, Chevrolet.
Nope, wouldn't have got any of those.
And finally, name one professional soccer player not named Pele or David Beckham.
Rats, those are the 2 I knew.
Ah, I knew it.
Well, I've got 27,000 to choose from. Let's go with I guess I can't say Cesaro. His character was supposed to have been a former soccer player.
Are you talking about WWE superstar Cesaro?
Antonio Cesaro. He was supposed to be a former soccer player, but there's a guy down in Brazil. There's 2 or 3 of these guys named this. I got nothing.
Wayne Rooney, you heard of him?
No.
All right. Well,
That's the only one you got wrote down?
that's the only one.
What if I
know.
just said like Bill Smith?
I'm sure there's been a Bill Smith that's played
Dadgummit.
footy. But you did well. You got the first one. No, you didn't do well. You did terrible. You didn't get any of the answers.
I'm sorry.
correct.
I'm sorry, everyone. I've embarrassed our nation.
We'd like to thank our sponsors.
Yeah, that's a real good lead-in for that.
Tom Treff, Jonas Rullo, Cole Bjorn Barman. I bet he knows. He knows.
I think that's 3 different soccer players right there: Cole, Bjorn, and Borman.
Mark McDonald, Adam Bradley, Chris Folds, Will Williams, Daniel Bingston, Zach Zimmerman, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, Chad Halstead, and Brent Dowdy. If you'd like to sponsor our podcast and become a member of the Amigos Game Selection Committee, visit our page over at patreon.com/Amigos Podcast.
Yeah, we need all the help we can get.
Next week, Aaron, the Game Selection Committee has decided, and we are going to play Team 17's Worms.
Okay. That I've played.
So tune in for that. Until next time,
Adios.